make a successful pitch?
So first of all, you have to know your project from start to finish. You have to know everything about this. If somebody asks you about characters, you need to have your character breakdowns. You need to know in your mind, although you know you won't have actual locations, but you need to know your project better than anybody, because you don't want to be caught off guard if someone asks you a question and you don't know the answer. It looks like you're not prepared. I think one of the other best pitch practices would be, if you have any type of attachment, to make sure you have that before going in, because it becomes a stronger pitch.
Okay.
You know, so for example,
When you say attachment, define that.
attached character, talent attachments, right?
Okay.
So obviously you all have seen Lamont and Here Today, so I'll use him as an example. If you pitched a project to, let's say, a network, and you did not, let's say I was your attachment, they're like, Tressa can't act, we don't know her, right? But if you turn around and you pitch that same project with Lamont, they're like, oh, you got Lamont? But do you really have Lamont? Don't put attachments that you don't really have. So I think those would be my top two.
Okay, is paperwork involved? Like, what is the process of showing that you really have this person?
Absolutely. So you would have some type of letter of intent or some type of legal doc that really says that you have the person. And people do that to me all the time. They'll call me and say, oh, I got Tay Diggs.
Yeah.
I got Morris Chestnut.
Right.
And I'm like, so tell me how you
Right,
really
right.
have them? And then you realize, no. But that's one of the things that will make people
Yes.
run away, because you know, if you run around town saying, I got this, I got
Right.
that, and if you don't really have it, it's like when you really have it, we don't believe you anymore.
Absolutely. Receipts. Let's talk about receipts. Cherise, what are some of the best practices to have in making a successful pitch?
One, I think you definitely need to know your audience, who's going to be in the room, and then especially if it's a network or production company, you need to know that company in and out, right? So I can talk to mostly like unscripted and like series stuff. Some people are just not realistic, right? You come in with an idea, it could be great, it could be the best thing that we've ever heard, but then the budget is unrealistic. You have things where you're trying to reenact history scenes. That's very expensive. Did you even think through that? You have, stuff that might just be very hard to execute in the time that you are pitching. And a lot of people just don't think through that. You know, yes, it's great that you have a great idea and you're very hungry about it and you want to get it out, but there's just like realistic things, even for a network or a production company, if they want to get attached to it, that has to be present for it to make business sense, but also like audience connection at the time. Is it connecting with other things that are in the market, stuff like that. So I think the best pitches I've seen is when a person thinks the whole thing through. Like holistically, it's like, this can come out now, this is the budget, we can save doing this. Like she said, I have this person attached, this person's already on as an EP, let's go. And then that's way easier for a company to digest and be like, hey, green light, let's get it going.
Love it. Gems being dropped. Tia, any additional best practices that we haven't mentioned?
Not really. I mean, these ladies covered it. I guess the summation of attachments, making sure that you know everything about your project, also having the realistic budgets, right, that you mentioned, along with making sure that you are hitting the brand demo of the network is critical. You wouldn't believe some of the pitches that I received when I was on the inside. Kind of sounds like prison, but it's not.
Yeah, I was about to say. When you got out, girl, when you got out.
It's very fruitful. But they say when you're on the inside of a network, because I've been afforded to do both, but on the inside, I was at a network and someone pitched about Peruvian nuns, saving gorillas, and it had nothing to do with the network. So you only have one shot, and like Tressa said, to be taken seriously. So make sure that you are really identifying the brand that the network has and has it as it exists. And then if there's ways that you can expand the brand, so be it, but at least be on target. I would say lastly, bring your enthusiasm. You know what I mean? You need to convince us that we're missing out, that we're late to the party if we don't get down with your project. Of course, that enthusiasm should come after the research and all of those things that the ladies also detailed. But that enthusiasm will allow us to believe that this is something that we need to be a part of.
Absolutely.
Right. If
Yes.
I could just
Yeah.
piggyback on something that Tia just said, just to give people an exact example. When Tia just talked about being on brand, that is so important to being able to get a green light, right? So I pitched a project to BET that was very on brand. They have a series called American Gangsters Presents Trash,
Yes, yes.
right? So there was a project that's actually getting ready to come out on October 5th. But that project was, we want to do a full biopic on Tanisa Welch, who has already been on their network before.
Right.
We want to have Judge Mathis EP, because he was an attorney, a judge at the time who was helping the women. We have Vivica Fox directing, and so I've already produced tons of projects for them. So it was a no-brainer for them to greenlight because it was on brand.
Right.
And you didn't have to try to sell it. It's like, oh, you have these people? Oh, Vivica's, oh, here you go, what day you shoot?
That's exactly.
So that's the on brand, just an example of the on brand parts. You have
Yeah, and it's interesting the way you layer the way to bring it to folks as that package. I have to ask, how did those layers come together? Was it serendipity, strategy? How did that come together?
I think a big piece is, I'm the production company, right? So a lot of times, and Tia kind of touched on this when she was on the inside, and I keep saying the inside. Yeah. So, but she, talked about this one project, they pitched her, and it just didn't make any sense. So as the production company, we know what makes sense. So for people out here, if you're not a producer or with a production, if you're not the production company, a trusted one, you gotta team up with somebody who they're gonna trust, because it's an easier pitch going in. They'll take you seriously. If you don't have the background, you don't have the experience, and you go pitch something, you're gonna say, well, who are you with?
Yeah.
Because it's really about trust, you know what I mean? We talked about the steps as an overlay of what's necessary, but a part of that is also the treatment that's also sent, the deck. So you can have a fabulous treatment and deck that gets our attention, but to her point, you want to make sure that you can be trusted by the network to actually execute on it. And even when I was speaking about having the right attitude, I have to give props to Tressa. That's how we met. Shout out to CJ Blair when I was in network on the inside. And she had a movie called Sinners Wanted. And we came into my office, looked at it, gave feedback, I flew it up, and at the time, the network was still trying to figure out their acquisition kind of tone and what they were gonna be doing. And it just didn't work at that time. But through tenacity, relationships, the right attitude, humble and hustle that she has, maybe like a year later when the network actually had, their provisions together on like, this is the tone, this is what we're gonna have as far as acquisitions outside of like sitcoms, she was ready and it got on. So it's true to form to make sure that your packaging is right, it's on brand, you have the right attitude, you develop relationships and you keep pushing. And also, the timing is real. There's so many times you should research what networks are doing with their executives. Whenever you see that there's a different change in leadership, sometimes it's someone that'll come in and fulfill the status quo proper, right, to keep that brand going. But then sometimes they'll bring in a network executive that has done something in a space that's a little different, a little spicy. You're like, oh, okay, well maybe they're looking at new ways to expand the brand. But that goes along with research and staying on the pulse of what's going on in the industry. So that's another little tidbit to say, okay, maybe they'll accept this new idea whenever they wouldn't in the past because they have leadership that's gonna push it forward.
Yeah, and one of the big things that you just said, like the execution, I think sometimes some creatives, they get stuck that, hey, this company is interested, but they wanna attach a different showrunner to it, or they want to attach a prodco to it. I think some people get disheartened by that and take that as well, this is not a full win for me, but indeed it is. You can't look at it that way because again, you got to think about all the different pitches that we get. So if a company's saying, hey, we believe in you, but your execution may be a little wonky, so we have these folks that's done X, Y, Z for us, we're going to attach them with you to bring this to life. I don't think you should look at that as it being a loss. Your project is still gonna get out there, your creative is still gonna see the light of day, and maybe if you turn that down or you take that as an offense, you are actually turning down an opportunity that could have been great for you. Because all you need is that one thing. Even if you're attached to another Prodco, you're still gonna have a project that is in the world, and then when you get to another pitch meeting, you're like, hey, I did this with XYZ, I can probably do it on my own now, you know?
Yeah, what I'm hearing is along this journey, be very flexible and understand that people that want to make it work do have your best interest if they believe they know how to make it work and modification of the dream on some levels. But I want to get a little granular, Tia, since you were on the inside. So for those who've never been in a pitch session or that modicum, who's in the room during a pitch? Like, paint the picture for me. If I'm in this pitch meeting, who's in the room? Who's at the table?
On the network side, it's usually someone from the programming and production department. Sometimes, depending on who it is, if it's someone super shiny, you may have the head of the department, right? Sometimes you'll have marketing, but mostly it's someone in production and programming that can greenlight. And we usually expect the creator of the series or show or whatever you're pitching, the writer, and again, sometimes they can get super fancy where they'll bring in the talent because they figure that's the 1, 2, 3 punch to ensure that you have invested talent, you have someone that really knows it, to her point of the creator of it, and the writer, and even the producer sometimes. It really just depends. And the director. I've seen a whole posse up in there. Because they're trying to convince you that we have the goods. We have the right unit to make sure that this really lands for us and it lands for you. So
does every pitch meeting look different?
It really does.
Okay.
It really does. And sometimes it's a Zoom. It depends on the relationship.
A lunch meeting.
There you go.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
I have questions about the Zoom. Is that too impersonal for you to feel me in my project?
Depends on how you translate.
Because it would be.
Well, I think you have to bring it anywhere you are.
Okay.
If it's you in the 30-second elevator pitch, you gotta bring it. If it's here, you have to bring it. You know what I mean? If it's actually on Zoom or in the building, you have to bring it.
Question, is a Zoom an indication of only lukewarm interest? Because some people take that personally.
No.
Okay, that's good to hear.
No.
Especially because right now, everyone's kind of still everywhere because COVID taught us you don't have to technically be in an office. Everyone's doing Google Meets, Zooms, it's a thing. So I don't think you should take that as, the production company or network is just not really interested. I think they're just trying to see as many people. So sometimes the technology helps, And again, if you're enthusiastic and you come with your materials, you share it before. Honestly, I've been at Spring Hill, most of the projects we picked up have been virtual meetings.
Wow.
So yeah, you just never know.
That's huge.
I want to acknowledge somebody in the room and give you an example of a pitch meeting that just happened just like that. So Serena Lee is in the building. Serena, the creator, is Kristen in here as well? Okay, so co-creator of Wicked City. Has anybody here seen Wicked City on All Black? All right. Not enough people have seen it, right? We're going to talk about that later.
Yeah, y'all gotta get them all back.
But Serena and Kristen, they came up with this idea. And Serena was in my mentorship program, and they said, they had this idea about black witches, and I was like, wait a minute, do y'all believe in the Lord? Wait a minute, hold up. So they kept saying, no, and I said, tell me how far this is going. So this was in November. So I said, okay, create the deck, send it to me, make sure the episodes are outlined. I remember having a call with Brett Dismute at All Black, and he said, okay, you know what? We don't have time for an actual virtual meeting. Just send me the pitch deck. I emailed him the pitch deck, and he called me on December 22nd. I'm in holiday mode.
Right.
And he said, hey, we want to do this. Can you shoot in January? I said, what? No. He said, we love this. It's something that the network, feels that is totally different. That's what Matia talked about. Sometimes you get an executive that just wants to get something out of the box. He said, we think this would do well for the network. I ended up calling Serena and Kristen and saying, over the holidays, you have to write these episodes. We got to start turning them in while I work on the deal. And we started shooting in April. So we didn't shoot, in January, we start shooting in April, and now we're on season, we just wrapped on season 2, and it comes out in November.
Give it up for Serena. You got a lot more crazy and crazy. That's Christmas Day.
But I personally love Zoom meetings.
Yeah.
I don't have to fly anywhere, I don't have to get dressed up. I'm cute at the top, and I have my pajama pants on at the bottom, and I'm pitching.
But like we said too, like even though All Black probably didn't do that type of format, kudos to you because Black sci-fi, Black horror is popping right now. So again, she knew what the landscape of the industry was turning into. She saw that there was a space and she created something. And again, I think people don't focus on that stuff. Like if I was y'all, there's so much Black anime. If someone has an anime idea right now, you're onto something. Like there's so much around gaming. Everyone's trying to figure out how to do gaming as a show and not just focus on video games. If you have something like that, you should be like very proud of yourself. You should be very strong in your pitch because you can always see, different trends of the industry, and that's the kind of wave you gotta ride. I'm not saying there's always general stuff that's gonna hit,
Okay.
but there's also waves that you really need to ride because right now, Black horror, they got money. Like
Right.
they're like, send it to us, So you have to pay attention to that.
And even to your point, I have a friend who, you can come in and say, I want this to be a series rollout, of like 9 or 12 episodes. And to your point, sometimes you look at that budget and you're like, oh, well, I'd love to co-pro with you, but we can't afford this at the time. Stay open to transitioning it to a different format. I know a friend whose passion project, again, was a series, but they ended up getting into gaming, blew up in gaming. Now they can leverage that, and now the networks are chasing them, and they're gonna make their passion project. So be open to any kind of way to get in. And to her point again, the interest is real. Mimi said it earlier, you don't wanna sell your soul, but you wanna be wise to try to make sure that you're listening so you can get in the door with something. So just be, flexible with it.
How much of having a package and a product to pitch is just the fact that it was the right thing in the right time versus chasing a quote-unquote trend or tracing what's quote-unquote hot based on what you're hearing across the industry and watching others be successful with? Is it that I just had one in the tub, or is it go right and fast because it's hot right now? Anyone can answer that.
I think for me, it's a little bit of both,
Okay.
right? I'm thinking about all the projects in 2022, because typically all of the projects that were greenlit for me in 22, we were supposed to film this year. Obviously, everybody knows with the strike, we weren't able to film a lot of these projects, but some of them, I would say would be 50-50 with your example, because there's no cookie cutter way of doing anything. Every single thing is different. If I met with Tia and we said, Tia, we're gonna do this. If you try to take that over, let's say to Fox, it's gonna be a totally different situation because it's different executives, it's different leadership. But learning, being in the room and constantly talking to people and networking is the key, because everything will change. Like you can't possibly know everything. I can sit up here right now and say, oh, you know what, Tia, let me ask you about this. Have they done this differently over here at TV One? Or what are they doing over here at Amazon now? Because it's gonna constantly change, and you gotta be in the know, and you gotta be with the right people.
So is the goal then to have a wide array of products in your arsenal because you're just that creative, or you're just aligned with that many people in your writer group if you're a writer or a producer, so that you can possibly have something on the ready?
I think the first thing is you have to have that one project that you know in and out, that you could basically stand up if somebody gave you money tomorrow. And then, you can spread it out and have some other stuff that may hit, and you can, if you had a meeting and somebody's like, oh wait, do you have something like this? You can probably bring it up. But I definitely think, especially if it's your first time and you're trying to get something off and get your foot in the door, I would suggest, and this is not just like blueprint, but I would just suggest probably keeping that project that is like you're passionate about, in and out, and you can get it done. Because you don't want to have something that you kind of touched on, you kind of wrote on, put it on the shelf, open it back up, and then it's just like, damn, do I even want to do this anymore? So that would be my
Yeah, even how you pitch it, it's true. Like, yes, you should be ready and available for anything, but you should have that one thing that you're like really steady with. Otherwise, you seem like hustle man. You know, you're like, yo, I got this. What you need, what you want, you know? And there's excitement in that, but I wouldn't know if you could do this one thing real good, you know? Because again, it comes down to trust. We love that you have a foray. Look at that main thing, the main thing. Yeah, so that's a wonderful point.
I started looking for the gentleman. I'm just going to scan the room to see if the gentleman is in here who pitched 5 ideas to me on the red carpet. I'm just scanning the room because I'm going to have you stand up so we can talk.
Come on, man.
I don't see him in here, but literally, I walked in the door. Now, this was a red carpet event. There's cameras going off. People want to talk to you. Miss Shalane, I don't know where Miss Shalane is, but she was right there with me. And he said, hey, when you get a chance, I got this idea. He starts to pitch the idea.
Wow.
So, now I used to be a school teacher, so I know how to manage my folks. I was like, yeah, that is amazing. Let's talk later.
Yes.
Started walking. He took a step with me. He said, also, there's one. I said, okay. Literally, and before the end of the night, and I'm not exaggerating, 5 projects. So I can't wait to see him so I can give him my teacher and talk.
Right. The hustle man was outside last night. For sure.
But you know what's interesting about that? Because when I was at Network Life, one of the best pitches I actually got was this guy though that had like a whole franchise around the one project. So he was like, I have a podcast extension, I have an app, I have a book. And we were like, oh shit, like this is actually very well thought out. And it was like a mini world in the one thing. And unfortunately COVID hit, so that's the only reason we probably didn't go as far. But sometimes, if it's connected to the one thing, and then it got legs maybe, but yeah, 5 is crazy.
It's a lot, it's a lot. And you were gracious too, you were smiling.
Because you know, I come from the world, number one, I used to be a school teacher, so patience is key.
Right.
But then also, I started writing before I started producing. So, you know, for all the writers, I know what it feels like when you have a great project and you just need a shot.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm here where I am today because somebody gave me a shot.
Right.
So I don't want to ever discount that. It was just the moment of, oh, you taking steps with me. We going together.
Security.
Okay.
You're going to hear these pictures.
No, I hear you too. As far as like, you know, as an executive, and like my mentor always told me that no one is that busy. And so I always, to your point, I know how it is. Someone took a chance on me, and I know how it is to wait for the call back. So it may have been like a month or 2 that I would get back to you, but you will hear back from me because you have to be sensitive to that, big time.
Tracy, you gave us a great example of a best scenario pitch session. What's one of the worst?
Ooh.
If you're willing to share.
So, I think just not knowing your audience. So you get, for me, and I'm speaking as a producer, production company, right? You obviously can't get in every pitch room. There's got to be a reason that you got in there, right? Some type of an agent, a relationship. You just don't get a pitch meeting. And I remember getting on a pitch meeting with Adam Sandler's group. And the young lady who got us there, she wanted to take lead. And she started pitching everything about the project. And she didn't know how to read the room. So the faces, it was virtual. So the people are on there like this. And I'm like, oh, they don't like it. She got a pitch, they don't like it. Because she was just giving too much information. So you can't have a pitch meeting and want to just talk for 15 minutes with no interaction. She didn't pause. I was sending messages on the text. Hey, and look at the faces. So that was not, and needless to say, that didn't go anywhere.
Yeah, but you bring up a great point. So there's pitch meeting etiquette. And that's important because
Oh my goodness.
if you don't know, you don't know.
Absolutely.
So what is that? Or
Yeah.
what's the clues into how somebody can work in a pitch meeting?
Yeah, I would say number one, you have to know who you're pitching to and understand what their needs are. If you can find out who's going to be on the call, what their position is, Google everybody. Okay, you should not get on a call and not know everybody who's going to be in that meeting. Sometimes you don't know. I remember when I originally got my Tubi deal, the first meeting, I'm thinking Tubi, and you know how people clown Tubi? You know, and they're like, oh, you know, So
They got budgets.
They got real budgets.
Hello.
But
I
in
just
my-
shot something that's being distributed now.
In my head though, I was thinking small. So I was like, oh, you know what? You know, it'll be two people saw, and I said, who's gonna be on the call? When I got the link back, it was all of these people, and the address at the end said Fox. So I was like, oh, this is serious.
Yeah,
So I was like, let me rethink everything.
right.
But just knowing that information in the beginning will help you, because now you know. I started Googling every single person who was going to be on the call. So it was head of development, it was head of slate. So I was like, oh, Jesus gonna hook me up. I'm getting a slate. And I did.
Okay.
I did.
Yes.
One other thing, this is just my personal pitch practice. I pray before every meeting. And the head of my Megamind Media chaplain, Rhonda Cotton, here in the front, please clap for her.
Yeah.
She is our chaplain, and it's important for me and my business. Every business you set your own culture for your business, but in my business, we pray about everything. Because even if it's a big entity that you want to get with, they may not even be the right people for you. So we pray on it first.
I love this.
Yeah. I think you said something really great too, because I know some people too, they'll get an agent, they think everything's done, they're like, oh, my agent's gonna pitch it for me. Sometimes you gotta tell the agent that you wanna pitch your own things. No one's going to know your project like you do. And yes, agents are great, they have their relationships, they're getting you in the door, but they might not be packaging it the way that you would package it. And so that's something you gotta think about, because some of them, I've seen them be heavy-handed with people, and they're like, no, we know the people, we should be talking. No, again, you got the agent, because the agent probably knows your idea is still for sale. So have faith in that and pitch your own shit. Because again, they're probably not gonna convey it the way that you would.
And also present a unified front. I've been in a meeting where like the producer and director were like working it out, you know, while they were pitching, and I was like, yeah, that's really unstable. Again, we're about to give you this. No, you're not gonna get it. And then from the production company standpoint, to Tressa's point and everybody's point, pretty much know who you're speaking with. I've had people that have respectedly gotten on my calendar, and everybody's busy, right? We're all doing our thing, and not knowing some of the background of what I do or what I'm looking for and the things that I'm affiliated with. So it truly comes back to research.
Yes. It's interesting. I want to talk about the twin sister etiquette, which I would say in this instance is culture. How much is culture part of the pitch in relation to who you're talking to, or does it not, and you just need to show exuberance and confidence in your product?
Again, if you research, sometimes, just being honest, the people you are pitching to, even if they oversee a black brand or a black part of a network, they might not be black. They might not culturally understand what you are talking about. But then again, if you research and you see who you're talking to, you can tailor your conversation and tailor the pitch to connect to that person. You know, everybody trying to do hip hop 50. Some of these white execs probably don't know most of the rappers, but they know it's money and they know that there's something to it. So it's all about how you package it. And not to say that like others can't get what you're talking about, but again, just make sure that it is very streamlined and easy for them to digest, as much as somebody that's in the culture and would get it like instantly.
Which goes back to how you set it up. I say never assume, because you never know where your deck is gonna go. It's in your head, and sometimes, I mean, obviously you have to get out of your bubble, right? But don't assume that everybody is gonna know everything about this culture. I think one of the writers said it earlier about, you know, building your world. Actually, Sharice, you did, right? Serena, forgive me, Serena, you know, make sure that you're tailoring your world. Just because you understand it, you really have to make sure that you spoon feed it to people in a creative way so everybody can catch it. Because you don't know who's gonna get it, and they should be able to pick it up and say, oh wow, I wanna be down, so.
So our two former insiders, Tia and Sharice. I feel like right now you guys have
Yeah. I gotta say,
We were set free from the same place.
I feel like everybody right now has an opportunity to get a cheat sheet from two people that understand how it works after the pitch and the conversations that are happening before you prepare, whether it's going to happen. So what are the takeaways you've learned from the pitch process that they should understand for when you have the second meeting inside? before you even decide if you're gonna do the project?
Listen to
What
the.
are you looking for?
Yeah, I mean, you get to the table because usually it was a relationship or you're interested in something, right? But after your first meeting, if there's any feedback, bring the feedback that you learned. You know what I mean? Because again, it's about collaboration and partnership. If I'm saying that, you know, we may need, case in point, a good buddy of mine from BET, Marquand Smith, was in the video library in New York.
Godfather of Harlem?
He had been pitching Godfather Harlem when I was doing stuff with BT back in New York. This is like 15 years ago. T, I got this with Malcolm X and, you know, and this one and that one, right? He's crazy Queens. Either way, he's been pitching it. And then when I was at Network at TV One, we really wanted to make it happen, but you know, for budget situations, and it just didn't fit. But I looked at it and I was like, you're pitching to a network that has a high demographic of African American women. Where are your women characters? He was like, oh, T, I gotta go back in. I said, yeah, this is great. I said, but with all due respect, Black women specifically consume the most TV, and we're gobbling up soccer and football. Like, that is a sweet spot. Period. That's business. That's numbers. We like to see ourselves. People dislike Real Housewives of Atlanta, this one and that one, but I'm there. I'm looking at what they got on. I don't like all the stuff, some of it, you know what I mean? But I go in and I see myself as cute, candy, you know, whatever. But the bottom line is that you need to feature the demographic that's leading. So when I spoke to him, I was like, first and foremost, you know, I give you this consultation, just like, with no money, you know, this is for fam. But you need to strengthen your female characters. And he came back and he brought in 4 incredible characters of Mamie. He beefed her up. You know, his wife, the complexity of being this upstanding woman working for the NAACP, but yet you're married to Bumpy Johnson, who's like gully, you know? So, and then you look at the daughter, so there's certain things that he brought out to make it happen. So to answer your question, you have to listen to the feedback that's given if you really want to make the deal done. And just really quickly, I know that sometimes networks do want you to have all of everything together as far as attachments. You know, sometimes we don't. You know, we just like the actual idea. And then again, that in the spirit of collaboration, we may pull something from another show and say, well, you know, this one is already on our show on the network. Let's have her be the lead. So again, it's this collaboration that you need to be open to. And it's just a really good time. People that would have never sat at the table are sitting at the table. Networks and institutions have been humbled because they're trying to get your eyeballs. You know, people are looking at content their way, their time. So this is really a wonderful time for everyone to really have clear, dynamic, compelling concepts. Go in there and do the constructs that we're talking about and sell your stuff.
No, I think the incorporating the feedback is very big because some people, I think, get so excited. They got through the first one, it went well, but then the second and the third, you're not really listening to the network or Prodco, and you're just kind of still chugging along and doing stuff your way and not taking their notes. Sometimes that, unfortunately, will then cause the deal to fall apart. So that is very important. Like, that is really the cheat because a lot of people think they can have the person come around, or, you know, they asked me to do this, but I'm still, no. You have to remember the person that hopefully is talking to you is an expert in what they're asking you to do, so you should, you know, address it and it'll make the project better.
Trust it. Oh, no, go ahead.
No, I'm just gonna say one thing, because a lot of creatives talk themselves out of the deal.
Hello?
Okay, and it's not
No,
being
really.
not being humble, it's ego,
Yeah.
right? And so look on your row and see if you see anybody that you think might have an ego. I'm just messing with y'all. But seriously, so many times I see it, you know, I'm talking to somebody and I can kind of spot it, and I'll just say, hey, if you really want to make this happen, you're gonna really have to check yourself. Because when you're asking a network to spend their money, they want what they want.
That's
And if you are not willing to bend and be collaborative, just don't do it. Don't do it.
Or when you have the leverage to come in, I think everyone talked about what Lena Waithe did with Queen of Slim, right? Like, she came in because she had a body of work to say,
Exactly.
I'm not taking none of y'all notes.
Yeah.
You know, when you have that pull, then you can do that.
Yeah.
But for that.
That's a great point too, because although we're talking about pitching, doing your own stuff is also the pitch. To Tia's point, you know, even Issa Rae, she started doing her own stuff, and that was the pitch. Like, her YouTube channel was her proof. And so, you know, that's a big thing that I don't think people talk about, because everyone's just like, hey, I don't have the money, I need to package this up and get it to somebody. But if you started as a web series, some networks are now looking to web series and buying them up and like, hey, can you do more seasons of this? So that in itself is new ways of pitching.
Yeah, and people, I mean, a lot of the talent that's being booked, we call it stunt marketing or stunt casting.
Yeah.
Because people are looking at how many viewers you have versus
Exactly.
if they can really act. So again, you know, you have all of this slight conformity to things that have been not the tradition.
Yeah.
So again, it's a really good time to break some barriers and get in there and create some good stuff.
Bert, can I just talk about the stunt casting? So when you're doing your pitch decks, right? Because this has been a model of mine recently, right? All of my projects, you'll notice if you watch any of my movies that have been shot over the last year and a half to 2 years, we have all of our legendary people, right? People that you know and respect. And then you might see a housewife in there. You might see an influencer in there. Now may not be my lead, right? Now we'll say last night, Yandy Smith was our lead. Did y'all enjoy her? Yes, she did great, right? She did great. So, but that's become like a model, because if you know the trends, if networks are like, look, we need eyeballs, what's the marketing plan here? We're like, okay, well, we have this person who has 10 million followers, this platform, they are now in the deck. So that's a good strategy.
True, because some of the networks don't have the money they used to roll out anything.
Yes.
So if they know that Yandy with her millions can bring you in just off of social media, they don't have to spend that much on their marketing budget. So again, it's those things that make it work in your favor if you can stack and be very strategic about how you combine business and creative. Dope model. Yeah.
Yeah, you made a great point when you talked about Wicked City, in that even though you got the deal done based on the pitch, you thought you were going to film in January and it wasn't until April. I don't know the specifics of that, but what about when you're successful with the pitch? How do you keep it together to actually get it done? Because I know there has to be some kind of nuance in between after they say yes to actually going to production.
Yeah, it always depends on the network. Some networks are very heavy-handed. They want to know everything that you're doing, because essentially they're giving you their money. So it's like, how many people in this room, if you had, you know, $3 million in your bank account, would you just say, here you go? Would you just give it to them? No, you wouldn't, right? You want to fact check, you want to watch them. So with All Black, we had a previous relationship with them. We had not done productions with them, but they know our journey, right? So for anybody who's in the room who doesn't know how I started, we funded our own movies from the very beginning. And which means you're spending your own money, you're watching every dime, right? And so when networks know that you've done that for yourself, they know you're gonna take good care of their money.
Pitch.
That's the pitch. So for Brett, it was a no-brainer. He's like, oh, you did 8 movies raising your own money, you know, let me give you some money.
That's right.
But we still had those deadlines. And so since, when I talked about Serena, Kristen walked in the room in the back, wave your hand, Kristen. Kristen
Hi,
is,
Kristen.
Kristen is the other creator of Wicked City. So I remember sending Kristen and Serena messages. Again, we're talking about through the Christmas holiday season, saying, hey, do you have episode 1 ready? Network want to see it. They're like, no, can you give us another day? I'm like, I will give you 12 hours. So that they'll go to sleep for a little bit, take a nap, then they'll send me episode 1. I'll send it to the network. They're like, oh, this is great. Can we get episode 2? So during that time, we just micromanage it every day. But what that showed the network was, wow, we greenlit your project 2 days before Christmas, and you turned it around, got us these episodes, and you're ready to shoot. So now, I would never have a problem getting money from them, because they know that we're efficient, we're gonna get it on time. People want to know that they can trust you.
Yeah, this is very much management.
Oh, for sure.
Well, yeah, and knowing, to your point, each each network is different. So some
Yeah.
people are slow starters, some people are fast. I just finished a project with Hallmark, and everybody knows the Mahogany cards, right? And we all support and love. They started a division called Mahogany. And one of my former bosses is really good with going to different networks and seeing how we're represented. And her biggest thing was like, I want the black woman to have a fluffy fairy tale. I want her to win, right? We have all these different things on the cadre. I want fluffy love, right? And so the Mahogany division was developed, and they, because they're curating their brand right now, we just did the 6th movie. It was tedious. I mean, I am managing everything first and foremost. Even to the purse and making sure we have a mahogany scarf in, to making sure that every hair is in place, because for Hallmark, respectively, they're building the fantasy, so it's very glossy. But then also what I loved too was I was brought in to make sure that it felt like us. So in some of the scenes, I was like, okay, where's the plastic on the grandmama's furniture? Like, those things is that's what we do, right? Right? But yeah, and things like, making sure that we had different frames, how we did our homegoing services, details like that. I wanted to make sure that each actor represented like us. So our lead had more of like a basketball physique. Another guy was like football. Another guy was average Joe, respectively, right? And then from the women, we come in crazy colors, right? All different kinds of shades. I wanted to make sure hair textures were represented. So those are the things, the way we say stuff. But it still had to be in brand with Hallmark, but to make sure that our touches were there. And it was tedious. I mean, every single outfit, taking a picture of it, sending it to them.
Very good.
You know what I mean? And if I heard from them then, and then I was like, well, you just do the Jedi mind trick. All right, I'm gonna make this decision if I don't hear from you. And then they start to trust you. And by first weekend in, they weren't even checking on me. So you have to be able to be pliable and to read the room and to work with the people that are trusting you with their brand, their money, and everything that comes along with it.
Yeah. And sometimes, especially with those bigger networks, like the legacy ones that can drag their feet, they've given you a deal and you're not seeing things work. Like, I think for Bel Air, he did like a test stunt, and he started just shooting stuff at people because he was tired of Peacock dragging their feet, and it worked. So there's other things you can do too to like speed up a slower moving network sometimes as well. Especially if you were like, yo, this is timely, you might miss the window. That is also a big thing for them, because if they're spending money and you're like, you have proof that it's like, yo, we need to hit now, most of the time you can also force them to move it up.
Yeah, I relabeled this the boss lady now. Now I'm relabeling it again, the cheat sheet.